Ad disapprovals are super frustrating and annoying when you're working with Google because it prevents your ad from serving, and it can take a lot of work and time trying to get that ad disapproval fixed. And so I'm going to walk through some of the most common types of disapprovals and ideas behind fixing them. And for context, my name is John from StubGroup. We are a Google Premier partner and the #1 resource in the world for fixing Google suspensions, disapprovals, and helping businesses stay compliant with Google policies. So let's jump into the top 35 or so reasons that Google disapproves ads. First of all, let's talk a bunch about the destination, so where you are sending ads. So, destination not working. This means that Google tried to access the landing page you have in your ad, and they don't think it's working. Often, it'll be a 404 error page or something like that, and the fix is to get the page working. Now, every now and then we'll see a situation where it seems like the page is working to you, but Google is saying it isn't. And sometimes this has to do with maybe it's working on one device or one geographic location and not others. And so you want to dig in with your developer to see if there's something nuanced like that that's preventing the page from loading properly for Google's ads bot. Next up, we've got destination mismatch. So this means that the domain that people are going to reach after they click the ad doesn't match the domain that you have in your display URL. There are different things that could cause this. For example, you might have a redirect in your URL, or you might have some kind of a click tracker or template at the campaign level that's causing a redirect. At the end of the day, the person has to get to the same domain as what they see in your display URL. So you need to make sure that's what happens, and then that should fix this problem. That is also very similar to a different disapproval that's fairly common that's called one website per ad group. And so this often happens when, let's say maybe you have multiple websites and you put multiple websites as landing pages in the same ad group. And a lot of people don't realize that even if you have a paused ad in that ad group, that still counts as a website that Google is looking at. So if you have this issue, delete any ads that don't point to the one domain that you want to advertise from that ad group, and that should fix your problem. All right, destination not crawlable. This is very similar to the destination not working issue, but it means that the Google Ads bot cannot crawl the page. For example, maybe in your robots.txt file, you are excluding the ads bot from crawling your page. That would be a problem, and you need to fix it. Another very similar issue is destination not accessible. Now this has more to do with geographic location. So a lot of websites will exclude traffic from other countries because maybe they were getting hit by a bunch of spam traffic or malicious traffic from a country, and so they said, hey, let's not allow anybody, any user from that country to get to our website. Well, the problem is that when Google's ads bot goes and crawls, it will often show as coming from a different country. And so this particular policy is mostly around like where you're targeting. So if you're targeting, India with your ads, make sure that you're not excluding traffic from India from reaching your website. And usually that'll fix this issue. Now, destination experience could be a couple of different things. Basically, it means that Google has an issue with the landing page with where you are sending traffic. And you need to look and make sure that it follows Google's different guidelines for landing page requirements. Now, insufficient original content is often something experienced by affiliate marketers, where maybe they are just putting the same information on their landing page as they just copied from somewhere else, and they're not really providing original value. And so what you need to do is you need to actually create your own content, your own text, could be imagery, could be video, that is original to your site and not just copied from other places around the web, so that you are providing original, valuable content. Otherwise, from Google's perspective, there's no reason for them to send people to your site because they can get the same information just going directly to other sites. Now, app or web store policy violation, this is relevant to people who are advertising apps. I don't see this super often as a disapproval reason, but basically it means that you're running an ad for an app that has an issue that's not following Google's policies. So you want to look into the app and figure out what the issue is there. An unacceptable URL, also not a super common one, but if you just put something as the URL in your ad that is not a normal website, like an IP address or something like that, that would trigger this type of a disapproval. And then unrecognized app, not a very common issue as well, but this would be trying to, let's say, run an app campaign for an app that Google doesn't recognize. and you can dig in more to figure out why Google doesn't recognize that app. Now, unverified phone number, this is a pretty common disapproval. We see this a lot. And this is particularly for call-only ads, as well as call assets and location assets. And there are two ways you can verify a phone number. You can either make sure you have the same phone number you're using in your ad on your website so that Google can crawl it, see that phone number in plain text on your website and match that up to your ad. Or you can claim your website through Google Search Console, link that to your ad account, and that proves to Google that you own the website that you're associating with your ad. So those are the two ways to do it, and then you'll often have to kind of appeal the disapproval of the call ad or the call asset to get Google to crawl, refresh, and then approve that asset. Now, unacceptable phone number is pretty straightforward. If you are entering a phone number that doesn't follow normal phone number format, or it's a fax machine or something like that, that's going to be a problem. So just make sure you're using a true, accurate phone number that's formatted the way that phone numbers should be formatted. And those are some of the most common issues for kind of destination and phone number requirements. Now let's move to some other common reasons. So malicious software. This is Google saying that they think you have malicious software on your website. The most common reason for this is that your website gets hacked and hackers place malicious software on your website. We see that happen very often, especially for WordPress websites. The way to fix this is to work with your development team or security team to find all the instances of that malicious software, remove it from your website, and then appeal things with Google. And this will often cause a suspension. So it is possible for ads to be disapproved for malicious software and for the account to not be disapproved, but often they go hand in hand. Compromised sites is kind of a similar idea. It's where Google believes that your site has been hijacked, been compromised in some way, hackers have gotten in, and they're going to disapprove your ad, and again, often your website, until they believe that that problem has been fixed. Now, unwanted software, don't see this super often, but essentially this is Google saying that they think that when someone clicks through your ad to get to your website, that in some way you're not being fully transparent about the software that you are advertising. So for example, you don't have a clear description of it, or you're failing to disclose the full implications of what will happen when someone installs that software on their device. So the way you fix this is by being really clear and specific about what it is you're advertising or offering, what will happen when someone installs it, what's required to install it, things like that. Now, unfair advantage, often the kind of the colloquial term for this would be double serving. And the idea here is that you are getting an unfair advantage by maybe trying to, for example, run ads for the same website from multiple different ad accounts, so that you would have an ad show up multiple times in the same type of auction that Google has, like a search auction, for example, and then Google says, hey, that's an unfair advantage. And so the way to fix this, this is definitely a more complicated one. If you're actually doing that, the way you fix this is to stop doing that. If you're not actually doing that, then you got to dig into things and prove to Google that you're not actually doing something that takes unfair advantage. Evasive ad content, don't see this often, but this would be essentially trying to manipulate things, whether it be the text or the link, etc., to try and get around Google's systems, which is also very similar to circumventing systems, which is, again, very often an account level suspension. Sometimes it's only an ad level, but often it's account level. And it's Google saying, hey, we think you're doing something so seriously wrong, you're trying to circumvent our systems. Maybe you're creating extra accounts to try and get around Google's suspension of an account, or you are doing one of many different things, and that is causing this problem. This is a super common reason for suspensions. Actually, I think it's the most common reason for suspensions right now, based upon kind of the state of the industry report that we put out on our website, StubGroup.com. If you want to read more about lots of suspension information, you can check that out. But circumventing systems, super common. Lots of people experience it, and it's a little bit of a catch-all as well for lots of different issues. So it can be really hard to know exactly what the problem is that Google's flagging, and so you've got to really dig into everything and try to make everything look as perfect as possible in terms of complying with Google's policies in order to then appeal and try to fix this issue. And spam policies for Google Web Search, I've never actually seen this be an issue. I'm sure it happens sometimes, but not a common one. If it does happen, Google says pretty explicitly what you shouldn't be doing as spam. Read that and stop doing it. Now let's also talk about trademarks a bit. So trademarks can cause ad disapprovals. They can also call ad limitations. And here's the idea. You, in theory, are allowed to use a trademark if you're using it in a couple different ways. So first of all, you can target trademarks. So if you want to target people looking for Amazon, for example, as a keyword, you can do that. You can also use trademarks in the second level domain of your ad's display URL. So when you write an ad, let's say your website is example.com, in the display URL area, you would say example.com, and then you have a couple characters, 15 characters for path 1, 15 for path 2, where you can say a couple other things. And so you could, for example, say example.com / compare Amazon, if maybe you have a landing page where you compare yourself to Amazon, and you can use a trademark in that location. Outside of that, however, in the rest of the ad copy, there are limitations. So you can't use trademarks in ads from direct competitors, and you can't be confusing, deceptive, or misleading with how you use trademarks. You can use trademarks if you are, let's say, a reseller of something. So let's say you sell Nike shoes. You are allowed to say Nike in the ads because you are reselling shoes, as long as the landing page is very clear about that and provides a way to purchase the products or services or get information about them. Now, that said, this is definitely a kind of a gray area where what will often happen is a trademark owner will see you using their trademark, I should say, in your ads, and they will fill out a form with Google. They will file a complaint, essentially, and Google may restrict you from using that trademark moving forward. If you are an authorized trademark owner, let's say you're a retailer for a business and they've explicitly said you can use your trademark, then there are sometimes ways where you can fill out a form to tell Google you have that permission. It's a little more complicated than it used to be. It used to be there was a very simple form you filled out. Nowadays, it's a little more of ask permission or ask forgiveness rather than permission. So there's less proactive of brands saying that you are allowed to use a trademark and more reactive of them having to see you using the trademark and say, hey, this is a problem, stop doing it. But at the end of the day, if you are using trademarks, make sure that you fall under the guidelines that are mentioned here. And even if you do follow under those guidelines, Google could still say, hey, they think that you're being misleading or deceptive in how you use the trademark, and that would be an issue. So don't do that either. I'll also cover some personalized advertising issues. So there are some things that you can't do in personalized advertising, for example, remarketing, that you can in regular ads. So Google has restrictions, legal restrictions around what you can say in ads that obviously you have to comply with the law in the locations that you're targeting. And then your ads shouldn't be trying to exploit personal hardships. So you shouldn't be saying things like, hey, do you have a terrible credit score? We can help. As well as things around identity and belief, sexual interests, and access to opportunities. So for example, there are limitations if you are in housing area, if you give access to credit, and if you're in the employment area. If you're in those areas, you can't do things like target by zip code. You can't exclude genders or specific different demographic information in order to comply with legal policies, laws around how you can do that type of advertising legally. And so if you see your ad is maybe approved, limited, well, if it's disapproved for, let's say, housing or employment, go and look at your targeting. You might not have an issue with the ad copy itself. It might be that you're targeting a zip code or excluding an age or something like that. And if you remove those things, that should fix the issue. And then if Google is saying something like approved or limited for housing, that is not necessarily a problem. It's just Google saying, hey, we are correctly saying that that your ads are applicable, or that the housing policy we have applies to your ads. But if it also says approved, they're saying, but you're good to go. You're not violating a policy. So you are operating within this policy, and if you do something that's not allowed by the policy, we will limit your ad, or we will disapprove your ad. But right now you've got the green check mark. Keep doing what you're doing. So I hope that's a helpful run through of some of the types of disapprovals that Google applies at the ad level. There are others. This is not a comprehensive list of every single one, but we've covered most of the most common types of disapprovals that we see all day, every day when businesses reach out here to us at StubGroup looking for help fixing disapprovals. And if you need help fixing disapprovals or suspensions or any policy issues at all, please reach out through StubGroup.com. We'd love to help and get your ads back online with Google.